slide.
What?
Good.
Everybody has to say continue.
Continue, yeah.
Or you get booted out.
Any other thoughts about those two
Is
kinds
there
of?
a difference between an aesthetic experience that is of the natural world and one that is of a man-made piece of art or music? Or
Maybe a choral piece?
architecture or something.
Or you could say that the spirit is present though what you do create. So,
I mean, I think when you see something somebody has made, I mean, that's like the image of God working through them. I mean, now there's crap that people make. There's also beautiful stuff, right?
Right. Well, I think that for me, a lot of my God as creator is a really important connection to me in how I'm grateful for existence and for humanity and the world. I feel like when I see the caves in Chile, I think that is perfection in a way. That is creation. That is God's creation. And if you're in a beautiful place, especially something as spectacular as that, there's a loss for words, and there's a kind of a silence that is a presence of God. And when I see art that is really beautiful or has some quality that takes you beyond remembering that somebody made it or somebody tried to make it, that it's just there in a spectacular way where the balance is correct, or just, I can't describe it, then I feel really connected and grateful to God making us in his image as creators. And for people to be able to make something like La Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, or I don't know, I've never been to the Sistine Chapel, but beautiful, beautiful cathedrals and beautiful art that transcends what humanity is, but more about space. I don't know, I can't say anything else. Sorry.
Thank you, appreciate that.
It's interesting you say that, Cecilia, because when I first saw this slide, I actually thought that was a painting, the caves in Chile, because they look,
Unreal.
it looks unreal, right. And it looks like a kind of beautiful impressionistic type painting. And I think it inspires the same kind of feeling.
I had the same thought, Joyce. It looked like absolutely gorgeous abstract art to me. I'm thinking a lot about my father today because it's his birthday, and he's an atheist, and I was trying to think about what for him might be a qualitative difference between an aesthetic experience and what he wouldn't necessarily call religious, but what we might call religious. And I'm just thinking, like, I mean, he would talk about how the beauty of either nature or something, or some magnificent artwork created by humans. I mean, he would talk. He is an artist too, by the way, and he would talk about just how it moves his soul, how it stirs up feelings of love and awe and wonder, and how, you know, I call all of that God, and he might not necessarily. So if an aesthetic, if that's, I mean, what is it that suggests to us that I don't know. I don't know if I don't know quite what to think about what a difference or a line drawn between aesthetic and religious experience would be, because if I'm talking about something that stirs my soul, but I don't know. I can't quite find the words. I guess what I'm saying is, you don't have to consider yourself a religious person to be moved in a way that we would consider religious. I call the force of love that just moves me and draws out my emotion, I call that God, and my father doesn't. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if there needs to be any kind of dividing line between an aesthetic experience and a love experience, which some would call God and some wouldn't.
Thank you. That's good.
If I could add a few words in there, I'd be happy to. It's very interesting when we talk about these experiences that how many times do you say, I don't know, or I don't understand? And Cecilia said it very beautifully. And to me, what art is first and foremost, it's human. And it's an attempt of us human beings to understand what it is to be human and to understand what God has wrought. And we know that that passes all human understanding. But that's why we keep trying. And when we find something extremely beautiful, we get closer to God. And even those, I think, who are not God, I don't remember all the people, Einstein, I think was one of them, so on, who says that art is proof of God. So I think it's perfectly okay for us always to say, I can't explain it, or I don't understand, or because that's the truth we all know, but we must try to understand. So what I need with this we call art is, of course, I need the soundtrack, because it adds a dimension also for some of us more than others, like anything. And the subject matter of what we choose also is always of great interest to me, because it's trying to figure out what a particular artist's relation to God is. And we see God in various lights because we don't understand. But art also does not exist in a single work of art. Art always exists only in comparison with other art, either early and late periods of the same artist, or different styles from between different artists. But as we understand those and compare them and share those experiences, we have a much deeper understanding, I think, of what it is to be human and really what God had in mind. And maybe someday we'll understand. That's a goal anyhow. Wouldn't that be a really wonderful thing to understand? So that's all I need to say about it, but it's a point of view.
Make it look a little bit further here if I can make this go. A lot of versions of Christian.
Carolyn had her
Oh,
hand
I'm sorry, I
raised.
didn't see.
Yeah, I just want to I'll be really brief, but my sense of whether I am having a religious, or I would call it more of a spiritual experience than an aesthetic, is it depends on how present I really am, how much in present moment I am with whatever it is that I'm looking at. Like if I'm really distracted, I might be able to see the beauty of it, but I'm not going to connect with a place, whether it's a piece of art or something in the natural world. I won't be able to connect with the creative source of it. And for me, you know, when I do my art, it's very rare that an piece of art comes forth that is not really God connected or creator connected. That's the only way that I know how to do it. And I'm grateful for that. But so I see everything as such an expression of the divine source that it's more and more rare for me to just have an aesthetic experience. It happens when I'm distracted by whatever the other outside stuff is, and I have to be connected myself to source and have a sense of that connection, because I'm always connected to source, but I have to have a sense and an awareness of that in order for me to create that as a religious or spiritual experience. And I think you don't have to believe in God to have that, because you're a part of the creative source. So I don't have a difficulty with atheists and their experience. So I'm gonna remute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol.
Yes.
And, Cecilia, I see you have a hand up.
I'll try to be quick too. First of all, I really second or connect with what Carolyn is saying. I think that when I work, I'm constantly aware that I am using a gift that's been given to me, as imperfect as it is. But I also, there's a story, I don't know if it's true, about Leonardo da Vinci, that when he would work, he'd get really dressed up in his best clothes to honor the thing that he was given to do, that he was doing his important work. And I also really love what Jerry said. And again, I'll be quick, but I loved it when you said you'd like to hear the soundtrack when you see something. And I often, if I'm listening, like the other day, I was hearing the London Trios, which by Haydn, which my siblings used to play in our living room all the time. And just that feeling made me think of, like, how would I draw what that feeling is? And it's not a human experience that I would draw. It would be an experience. But again, that is always about, we're always trying to reach and strive, the way you said, that what we can try to do is imperfect, but it all leads us to trying together to express using our gifts. Okay, bye.
Joyce, what?
Mhm.
Another hand. No?
I don't think there is now.
Okay.
Wonderful comments for everybody, by the way. So, you know, there are versions of Christianity and other religions too, Orthodox Judaism is this way, Islam, who are highly suspicious of the visual arts. I don't need to be unmuted, do I? My computer thinks I do. But I think
No,
No, you're
because
totally
we can
muted.
hear you through the,
good.
Mhm.
I'm thinking of the Puritans in England. This was during the English Civil War. It was kind of a Calvinist theology behind the parliamentarians. And they went through English church parishes like a tornado.
the
Because
iconoclasts.
they're the iconoclasts. They smashed statues. They shot the heads off statues of the Virgin Mary. You know, they thought that was all idolatrous. They wrecked windows. And they favored a very plain service without religious art as much as possible, focusing on long sermons.
Yeah.
There's our boy Cromwell there. You see they're carrying out candlesticks and things. So these are some things that they destroyed. Some of it was actually ordered by the government, you know, the parliamentarians. And then there was just a lot of vandalism in churches at that time too. So what would Cromwell destroy at St. Mark's?
Everything.
What if we, this is just a picture of our altar. Actually, it's a wedding, but it's the only good picture of the altar I could find. So what would we get rid of there?
Well, the piece is gone.
Yeah, that's
First
the
of all.
middle of the piece is the first thing out of there.
The cross in the
The
corner,
cross, the flowers,
the altar.
the marble altar. They replaced it with a wooden table.
Mhm.
Put something over the bride's shoulders.
Yes.
I think we all feel that that would be appropriate. But
And yeah, and you didn't show the windows in that picture,
No,
but
the
but the
windows
windows
gotta
would
go.
be, yeah.
Mhm.
Islam does not allow representational art.
Mhm.
They emphasize is, again, the word, not images. And so they make images out of the word with this beautiful calligraphy, which is stunning whenever you see it, I think. So there are Christians who really embrace the arts, as we know. A lot of the history of fine art in the West is tied up with church and religion, and were displayed in churches. And there are Christians who think that painting and sculpture and music, of course, a well-written liturgy, dance, theater, many other things probably, are appropriate for Christians and even for worship. So a thought is, how do we account for such different views? Instead of people who think that art needs to be dismissed, people who think it should be embraced. It's a very strange situation. Who's right? So speaking of,
Are you asking us who we think is right? or
I'm going to
no?
ask you in just a second.
Okay.
I want to just put that question in your mind. This is the Pieta. Obviously, this is a big church in Washington, D.C., and our denomination, that if you haven't gone to see the National Cathedral or the Washington Cathedral, you really owe yourself a trip. It's a lovely place. It's like the cathedrals in England, but it's not sooty. Yeah.
That's right.
There are also
Yeah.
stained
I know.
glass windows of space.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We have
Mhm.
space in our thing.
We have a moon rock.
I have a moon rock. So Episcopalian.
And
Just-
Joyce saw that mural in North Carolina. There's a local mural painter. It's a tiny little church, nice church though, tiny little church, and that's up in the front. There's a Sistine
And it's a
Chapel.
fresco.
It's a fresco, yeah.
Used with materials from Italy, so that it's like the old frescoes.
And I think there's some art in that picture on the right too.
Pardon me?
Egg, don't they use egg?
I don't know.
Look at the carvings over our door here. Do you ever notice how the beautiful carvings there? Just look at the architecture on the right. I mean, we clearly value art too. I want to go back to that question we had. How far back do I have to go? So who is correct? What's the right attitude? I mean, can you see the point of saying, look, visual arts, beautiful music, those create aesthetic experiences maybe, and we're trying to go for a religious experience. Maybe we don't even care about experience. We just want to get a certain message through, and we don't expect Sunday morning or any time in church to be sublime.
Mhm.
We just want to get people, the elect, to show themselves.
Well, I think you just answered your own question by that sarcastic remark, right?
There's a beautiful historical point, I think, where St. Ambrose, who wrote Ambrosian chant, very beautiful chant. And it's written that he would pray to God regularly to forgive him for writing such beautiful music, because it would distract from the words of the Bible, of the liturgy. So he felt he was sinning by writing things so beautifully and using this great God-given talent.
I find that tragic.
It
find
is.
that
Mhm.
I feel like the idea behind forbidding or limiting artwork is the idea of trying to prevent or prohibit idolatry, but I think there's some confusion over what idolatry is, because I don't think that trying to understand God in all the ways that humans try to understand anything, which can be by meditating on something through art or music as well as words. As long as we know that we're not going to capture the fullness of God, because that's impossible. If we think we've captured the fullness of God in anything else, that is idolatry. But I also think idolatry is, is something like believing money is the be all and end all of life, or believing that, or I think that war is a form of idolatry in some ways, because it's basically destroying the image of God in human beings. And it's also, I think, so that's what I think about that. I think that prohibiting artwork is kind of a misguided means toward the goal of preventing idolatry. And I think that it is a wonderful thing to embrace all kinds of art. The only caveat I have is that we need to remember that the living images of God on earth are human beings, and art nourishes the human soul. So I think humans need art like they need food, but that we can't decorate gorgeous buildings and neglect the poor. So that's my only, like, if too much money goes to making a church building beautiful and not enough goes to feeding the hungry, then I think that that's out of balance. So
Well, we can do it, but we may not.
Mhm.
So,
Mm.
Speaking of idolatry, Joyce mentioned yesterday, we were talking about this, that your plain churches and your book can be your idolatry.
yeah, like words can be idolatry. Yeah.
Which say when you first
Oh,
moved to
when we
Wheaton?
first moved to Wheaton, we visited a church that was so plain.
Many of my
and
colleagues thought church was the greatest thing ever. So,
I grew up in a Baptist church that didn't have a lot of, I mean, partly they were poor, but they didn't have, it was a new church and didn't have stained glass windows, but it still had a kind of beauty about it with the arches and so forth. But we went to this church that just looked like a big gymnasium with folding chairs
Mhm.
and nothing.
Concrete floor.
And I just was like, I almost feel that they idolize the simplicity or the lack of decoration,
yeah.
that becomes almost an idol for them, that we've stripped all of that. And, and so in a way, to me, that was a kind of idolatry.
Mhm.
Mm.
Give Joyce credit for that. I could have told that and you would have thought I came up with it, but no.
Would I have let you do that though?
No, that was Carolyn had something to say.
I'm just going to insert here that no, I'm just beginning to get a dose of art history, so I might be dangerous. But in the class I happened to take, emphasized a lot the political influence of many of the magnificent art pieces in our church, that there was often a lot of politics and power struggle and who is better and who's more in charge. And it makes me look at these images much differently now, knowing that than I did before, when I just thought somebody just gave their whole life over to create these beautiful images as representations of the divine. And now I look at it about the power struggle and who's in charge and better than. So I just wanted to put that in there because I think we need to keep that in mind.
Human, right? Art is a human enterprise.
You have raised hands.
Yes, we have a raised hand from our.
Yeah, I actually, Carolyn, that's a fabulous point. I think you have to be careful with some kinds of religious art because people have been extremely hurt by white Jesus. That's, I think, the easiest way to say it. The Desmond Tutu Children's Bible is the most beautiful children's Bible I've ever seen, and it just depicts all the biblical scenes with people of various races, and Jesus could be Black in one picture and look more Middle Eastern or Latino or Asian in another. And but yeah, some religious artwork in the way that it literally whitewashes Jesus has been incredibly, it's been used the way the Bible has, the way interpretation of scripture has, the way churches have to weaponize and colonize, and so so there is all of that when you get into that's I mean, I see that as part of the conversation. I don't know. I mean, I'm pro art, so I'm not against art, but I think it has been like just about anything else, it can be weaponized.
Pictures of white Jesus can be spectacular. Then you have that.
Can be, but they can be spectacular pictures, but it's just part of the way that it's been used. There's a long history behind it of, and there's the fact that people don't make those images in order to oppress. Some people, I mean, but that's a long, hard conversation.
No, I was waiting to Diana.
Oh. So should we move on, or do you want to say more, Lindsay?
Sorry, no problem.
So yeah, we're looking at some of the great works of art. I don't know, you can't really tell, but I guess that's white Jesus there. That's pretty much white Jesus there, I guess. Well, maybe not, I don't know. Hard to tell, probably the best way. We represent ourselves at St. Mark's with a piece of art from our friend Beth Trelevin. Beautiful logo, I think it really is spectacular.
It was inspired by Richard Rush.
Of course, with the Richard Rush
Right.
Sculpture we usually have at church. And then there's just a building with some guy in front in white, probably escaped from it.
There's the white Jesus.
White Jesus.
Arts committee, which is unusual, right? I mean, lots of churches don't have arts committees. And we have photography, printmaking, painting, iconography, calligraphy, stitchery. Those baskets, I remember them very well. So, that's really kind of a great thing for us, I think, and something that could be a way to keep moving art forward at St. Mark's. We all remember this. It's hard to believe this is this long ago. the Milla exhibit, and there's a lot of art here. The middle one, of course, we have now purchased. It's in the church.
Mhm.
So God and beauty, you know, the temple, God gives very explicit instructions how the temple is to be built. And the emphasis is to make it glorious and beautiful. Our attitude toward the arts depends on our theology. How we think of God and how God relates to his creation or to God's creation makes all the difference. Is God simply a builder producing a shed so we can, you know, use it? Is the universe God created just sort of a corrugated steel shed? Or is God an artist reveling in beauty? And that Solomon's temple gives you an idea that God really cares about beauty. And there are a lot of scriptural passages that are fun to think about that refer to God as a being who is both beautiful and who values beauty. This is from 2 Chronicles 20. When he had consulted with the people, he appointed those who should sing to the Lord and who should praise the beauty of holiness. This is where God is giving Job a hard time. We're asking him some questions. Have you an arm like God? Or can you thunder with a voice like his? Then adorn yourself with majesty and splendor and array yourself with glory and beauty. One thing I have desired of the Lord that I will seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in his temple. To behold the beauty of the Lord. I can't get this to advance for some reason. There it goes. I will meditate on the glorious splendor of your majesty and on your wondrous works. I really like this. I just came across this. For how great is his goodness and how great his beauty.
Right. Mhm.
For Aaron's sons, you shall make coats and sashes and caps. You shall make them for glory and beauty. This is God's instruction in Exodus there. And then there's even something about artists. So Exodus 31, the Lord said to Moses, see, I have chosen Bezalel, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with wisdom and understanding, with knowledge, with all kinds of skills. We were talking earlier about the idea that maybe the artist in some way is inspired by God's Spirit, whoever the artist is. This seems to suggest that idea that God has given the Spirit, and that's where the creativity and the skill comes from. To make artistic designs for work in gold, silver, and bronze, to cut and set stones, to work in wood, and to engage in all kinds of crafts. Moreover, I have appointed Aholiab to help him.
It almost is like Ohio Lab.
Yeah. Oh, that's one of those names that in scripture that doesn't seem to have caught on.
Your name, Oholiab.
Aholiab. Our next child, my son, if we have another son, he'll be Aholiab.
I can go along with that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah.
He talks about giving ability to all the skilled workers to make everything I've commanded you. So God's valuing the artist here, and God seems to be engaged with the artist, giving the artist the talent and the skill. So, other thoughts?
Just been proof texting us.
I saw it. I love to do it.
I feel bamboozled.
Well, I'm well skilled in the art of proof texting. I can proof text.
Well, it's replete with beauty and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
To, to see it.
I'm the king of proof texting. So yeah, I think though that these passages, clearly talk about God's beauty, God's valuing beauty, worshiping God in the beauty of holiness. So what are our reactions to this first week about God and the arts and faith? What's our takeaway? What do we
Well, I'm just glad to be in the little tiny section of Christianity that loves, embraces, revels
Yeah.
in art and beauty and sees it as a revelation and gift from God. I mean, I just,
Yeah.
it would be very sad. I mean, but I wouldn't know it if I were in the other camp, you know, just the folding chair and the long, boring sermon, you know. I think it'd be like bread and water, you know.
I also think that, the tradition that St. Mark's has of showing different art, you know, on the walls makes it a lively church,
Yeah.
rather than having the same thing, the same artwork or whatever, or nothing on your walls every
We even
week.
change up
You know,
the art in the front.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
we have a cross, sometimes we have a beautiful painting that's much
To me,
nicer.
that makes it alive and recognizes, the contribution that art can make to worship.
And I think it's important when we think of art to not only think of visual arts, but to think about music and
Which we can hear
how-
right now.
right, which we can hear and how it enriches our experience at church, and also the liturgy, the language is so beautiful.
Mhm.
That you know that that art is bigger than one medium or one way of expression.
I think art isn't something that gets just to be set aside in galleries. I think art permeates life. I think everything we do with an artistic intent. I think whether we're making dinner or decorating our homes or picking out our clothes for the day. I went with a somber theme, then I perked it up. But, you know,
Good. One of the things that I'm thinking about just as a result of this discussion that I haven't thought about before is, you know, I don't know about the folding chairs and the cement in the gymnasium, but I'm kind of thinking about the Islamic tradition of only portraying the word. And in a way, I mean, to me, that doesn't, I know if they're addressing idolatry, for me, what that kind of has meaning for me is that we can't be perfect. We can strive. This goes back to what Jerry was saying too, about we can strive to use our gifts and make something, but it will never be the perfection that is God. So in a way, if there is only the word in worship, it doesn't work for me, but for them, for people who use it that way, it's an recognition of that. And I think though that it shouldn't prevent making art all over the place and using those gifts, but maybe for some people in their form of worship, they don't want that in the worship space.
Yeah, I think that for all the Muslims I know, it is mainly about the worship space itself, because I mean every Muslim I know takes pictures, has artwork, maybe even portraits in their house, pictures of,
Sure.
you know, and so it's just in particular for worship, but it's also I think that although there's so many ways of interpreting the Christian faith, and there are a lot of Christians who actually believe that the Bible is 100% like divine dictation. That's some interpretations of what the Bible is. It's not my interpretation of scripture, but for Muslims, the Quran is a recitation. It is direct divine dictation from God. So the words of the Quran themselves come directly from God. And so when you are, I mean, you can say, I think you're right, Cecilia, in that there is something about not trying to replicate the creation of God in terms of the physical world in artwork in a worship space, but the words of the Quran themselves are the direct creation of God, and exploring them and replicating them with as much beauty as you can possibly muster is a form of worship in itself. So we can think of it that way. There's a humility in not trying to replicate the human body in a worship service, because first of all, there's a modesty issue of but there's also only God can make this, but there's also this sense of reverence in physically taking the word of God, the Quranic recitation, into one's hands and writing as a form of worship itself. Also, the Quran has other aesthetic beauty in that it rhymes, so it's a musical. There's music as well as art in the visual depiction of it. So I just wanted to mention that.
I was just bringing it up as in the tying up of the conversation. Didn't mean to hijack. I was just saying I was grateful for this conversation that it introduced my wondering about those kinds of things. Oh, back to you, David. Sorry.
Lindsay actually kind of put her finger on it when she said that there's a kind of biblical interpretation that sees the scripture the way Muslims see the Quran, which is every word was dictated, and therefore we focus on the word. And in particular, not just that every word was dictated, I think that is part of the way those people think. But I think also the idea that the salvation message and other kinds of messages from God have to be given 100% emphasis. So that kind of thing.
Does Theo have something?
Theo, you're on my screen. Are you?
Yeah, I'm just reminded, going back to Muslims, of the beauty of their mosques.
Right.
There's some beauty, so they do express beauty.
Yes.
They, in their own way, they're just beautiful, beautiful mosques. So, everybody has this need to express, and that's one of the ways that they do it. And Muslim women dress beautifully often. So, yeah, aesthetics are in their life.
Let's think about a holy hour. No, it's not. I don't really have anything to say about it. The ellipsis there is like he's son of this guy, son of that guy, that's why I took those ellipses in there. So Rizalo was apparently somebody you would know in those days. He's the son of all these people, and he has got all kinds of skills, and he got a whole lot of a bunch of other people too. So good to know that God equipped them for good work. So yeah, art clearly does touch on some of the same parts of our life that faith touches on, right? Deep feeling, joy, some things of that sort. But they're not the same. They clearly are connected. Anybody have a wise conclusion? I don't think I have one. I think we are past the time a little bit. I will thank everyone for their contributions. I hope I didn't cut anybody off.
Thank you.
I tried not to. Everybody's contributions were great, and I enjoyed it.
And next week,
Joyce.
Next week, it would be great if you can come in person, because Peter Bott will be here. And I believe the plan is to kind of look around the church and I know he has done some thinking about his own personal view of art and faith. And I know he'll be talking about that, but we'll also be looking at the photographs that are in the church that he has taken.
See, when Peter takes the photograph, he's not just recording an event. He's making art.
Yeah.
He's very how he operates.
And
I think you really will find that worthwhile.
And he's going to be here in person from Tennessee, so I hope you will be too.
So I look forward to seeing everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.